If you're always trying to keep it together and stay calm, or if you've experienced trauma in your life and you're trying to get back to how things used to be, then this episode is for you. Healing isn't about going backwards or fixing the past. And it's not about becoming some perfectly balanced version of yourself who never struggles. So, one belief that keeps people stuck is that healing means that you have to get back to who you were or who you think you should be. Real healing is about growing into someone more present, more aware, more capable of facing life as it is. So, welcome to the Building Resilience podcast, episode 228, Why Going Back Isn't Healing and What Is. Welcome to Building Resilience, a podcast where theory, practical strategies, and inspiring stories show you how to unlock your best life. I'm your host, Leah Davidson. As a certified life coach, speech-language pathologist, and nervous system resilience expert, it is my mission to teach you how to be more resilient to life's adversities. I will show you how to manage your mind, befriend your nervous system, process your emotions, and even eliminate stress. It's time to do more than just survive. It's time to thrive. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are going to dive into why your body doesn't actually want to go back to normal, the science behind stress, adaptability, and something called allostatic load. We're going to talk about what resilience really is and what it's not, why symptoms that you have may not be so random. They may actually be cumulative. And of course, we're going to talk about how to start regulating and restoring from the inside out. Now, if you've ever heard that your body wants balance and wants to return to balance, this is true, but only partly. The traditional idea of balance is something called homeostasis. Now, bear with me because we're going to be talking about some terms that you may hear casually tossed around here and there. So, homeostasis basically means like you're keeping your house at exactly 72 degrees year round. There's no variation, there's no shift. In homeostasis for your body, well, your body wants everything steady. Your heart rate, your hormones, your blood sugar, your digestion. Sounds kind of ideal. But the problem is life doesn't stay at 72 degrees. Real life brings constant change, emotional disruptions and tension and relational stress and illness and grief and joy and growth. And so if your system only knows how to operate in homeostasis, then every shift is going to feel like a crisis. That's where allostasis comes in. So this term allostasis is really how your body maintains stability through change. So it's kind of like opening windows in the summer or adding blankets in the winter or adjusting your fans or shifting gears. Allostasis is all about adaptability. It's your system saying, okay, what's needed now? What adjustments can we make? And let's recalibrate. Now, the problem is if your system is asked to adapt too often or too intensely, or you don't ever give it time to recover, you build up what's called allostatic load. Now, allostatic load is basically the wear and tear on your body and brain from chronic stress and constantly adapting. It's like the slow accumulation of all these little efforts without ever having some rest. So it's going without ever having a reset. So you can think of it like a phone constantly running. Apps are running in the background. It will eventually slow down and drain and crash unless you stop to plug it in and to charge it. Now, what happens if you don't release this allostatic load, you don't actually adapt, you don't build more capacity to carry the load? Your nervous system can actually start to wear thin, and you can start to feel like you're running on fumes, or you just feel like it's just too much to handle. And this can show up in different ways in different areas of your life. So physically, you may experience things like fatigue or headaches and jaw problems or gut issues like IBS or reflux or bloating. Maybe there's some hormonal imbalances, increased inflammation, and maybe you're going to have bouts of insomnia. And then there's also the mental and emotional signs like brain fog, anxiety, dread, feeling numb, or the opposite of feeling overstimulated, or mood swings, or being shut down, feeling burnt out. or that tired and wired feeling. These aren't random. These are nervous system alerts. They're basically your body saying, hey, we're carrying too much. We need help. We need your attention. Pay. Now, this is where we can talk about something called the overload theory, which basically just means it's not just one thing, it's everything. So I'm sure you can relate. Sometimes you'll be talking to somebody and you'll hear that they're struggling, and then you'll hear them say something like, well, everything was fine. And then some life event, maybe it was a loss or a job change or a breakup or an illness. And then all of a sudden, everything went wrong after that. The question becomes, did that thing cause the symptoms? Is there a direct link between things? Well, more often than not, the event that the person thinks is a trigger was not the only event, but was probably the final straw. And that's what we call the overload theory. So every person kind of has a unique threshold, a point where their body's capacity to adapt is just maxed out. It's kind of like their tipping point. When the total load exceeds that threshold, then symptoms are going to emerge. And you can think of it like we all come in different cup sizes and we can all hold different amounts of liquid. Now we can keep adding and adding and adding, and eventually the cup will overflow. Now, I know we use this analogy a lot for self-care. That's kind of like the good kind of fill your cup. But what I'm talking about here is a bit different. It's looking at how much can you handle before you spill over. So you see, everyone has a different spillover amount depending on what their capacity is, depending on how big their cup is. And then, of course, was it like that last amount that was poured in? That's the entire problem. Or maybe the amount poured in wouldn't have been such a big deal, except it happened to be the amount that filled it right up to the brim and spilled over. So, what are the things that get poured over in our cups and cause our cups to fill up and eventually spill over? Now, it's hard to say for each individual because we're all different. So, what may feel like a stressor for me may not be a stressor for you. But we can look at some typical ones, and you can ask yourself which ones are contributing to filling your cup up in the bad way. So, each one may seem very small, but together, what we see is they can create overload. So, there can be biological stressors. If you do have some poor gut health, or headaches, or infections, or inflammation, then there can be chemical stressors if there's toxins in the air and pesticides. And then, of course, the emotional stressors. Maybe you do have unresolved grief or trauma, or there's just chronic stress in your life. We have physical stressors. Maybe you're not moving enough. You have a sedentary life. Maybe you have pain or poor sleep. And then, of course, we all know there's technological stressors where we have a lot of screen time. There's blue light, and then social stressors, which can be isolation or toxic relationships or just having a lack of purpose. So essentially, the symptoms that you experience, they don't really come from one cause. They come from a buildup of things. And we can call that buildup of things accumulated dysregulation. So when people say, I don't know why I'm feeling this way, this came out of nowhere, it's usually because it's almost never just one thing. It's the accumulation, it's the buildup. Researchers have shown that ongoing stress creates real physical wear and tear on your body and your brain. So it's not in your head, it's actually in your nervous system. Let me share you a quick story that reminded me of what happens to our nervous system. A few weeks ago, my husband and I, we were away, and every morning I would go for a walk on the beach. Now, it was a little bit chilly, so I was wearing my leggings. And one morning I was walking really close to the water, and the tide kept coming in and the waves were splashing higher and higher. So I kept on trying to pull up my leggings to avoid them getting wet. But I knew I didn't want to pull them too far because I knew it would stretch them out. And if they stayed stretched for too long, especially when they're wet, then they can lose their shape because this happened to me before. Now, another example I have is I have a tiny head. And when someone tries on a hat of mine or sunglasses, it kind of drives me crazy because they stretch them out. And then if they wear them too long, they don't really fit the same on my head again. Well, that's exactly what we do with our nervous system. We keep stretching, we keep pulling, we keep adjusting and reacting. We stretch and stretch, thinking that we're doing that to avoid discomfort, which we are avoiding discomfort to a certain degree, but we're trying to adapt and adapt, and we're getting stretched too far for too long. And then something changes in how we fit inside our lives. And at some point, we're no longer the same shape. It's not a bad thing. It just means that something has changed. Now, I've seen this often with the clients that I work with, especially those recovering from brain injuries. They will say to me, I just want to get back to who I was. And I get it, that longing is so very real. The challenge is you can't really go back. You can't really go back after trauma, after grief, after illness, after burnout. I often give the example of becoming a mother. Now, in reality, I used to be single. I had no kids. And now, years later, I am an empty nester. I don't have any kids around. My kids no longer are here. So essentially, it should be the same as who I was pre-kids because I'm single and free again. Except we all know that that's not the case. Motherhood changes everything that you do. Even if your kids aren't around, you can never go back to being single again. So certain life events actually change your system. And then if you're trying to go back, it only adds more stress because your system isn't broken, it's different. And the work isn't to rewind, it's to rebuild. And trying to go back can keep you stuck. That's what Benjamin Hardy describes as the gap in his book, The Gap in the Gain, that space between who you are and who you think you should be. Constantly trying to get there can actually put a lot more stress on your system. Now, instead, healing begins when you build the adaptability to meet who you are now. Now, another concept that I love is found in the book Master of Change with Brad Stulberg. He's an expert all about all things change. And he talks about something called rugged flexibility. It's the balance between rugged, like your core traits and values and your inner compass, and flexible, your ability to shift and to reorient and to move forward. And he says that change isn't something that happens to you, it's something that you're in conversation with. Now, he also talks about a concept called the identity house. He says, if you live in just one room in this house, like you're the athlete or you're a parent, and then something happens to that identity, it shifts, your entire sense of self can collapse. But if you build many rooms, like spiritual rooms, relational rooms, creative rooms, you can remain grounded even when one part changes. Now, I talk about a similar concept to this in my episode called Identity Diversification, episode 175. So you can go back and listen to that. We all need to be working on different areas of our lives, different roles, different relationships, different areas to grow, so that if something happens, we are diversified and we can be flexible. We can be this rugged flexible. And I actually think rugged flexible is the ability to be regulated and the ability to be resilient. Because resilience is not about not being affected by things. And it's certainly not about not being so strong that nothing impacts us. I think resilience is about being able to be reshaped and allowing ourselves to shift and grow and adapt without losing our center, without losing access to our home base, which I call the zone of resilience. Now, way back at the beginning of the Building Resilience podcast, I shared my thoughts on resilience. There's a whole episode about it. And I shared that Martin Seligman, who's like a pioneer for positive psychology, he talks about in his studies how most people are naturally resilient. The reality is, we will all go through challenges, adversity. I often say adversity is like your shadow. You can't get away from it. So there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. We're going to react and we're often going to fall apart. But most of us can get back up again. Now, some people will get stuck in PTSD, but there is also the possibility of post-traumatic growth, where I also did a whole episode on that earlier in the podcast. And this is where people often develop a deeper sense of purpose, or even stronger values, or a greater appreciation for life, a greater self-awareness after their challenges. Now, this growth isn't always automatic. It happens when we have support through practices like connection and our ability to regulate. And that's why I teach nervous system work. It's not just healing, but it is as like we're building our infrastructure. We're building this infrastructure to hold you through the past as you do heal and move through the past, but it's to help stabilize you in the now and to prepare you for whatever's coming next in the future. So, if we want to get practical about this, when we talk about regulating your nervous system and reducing this allostatic load, that built up stress and the wear and tear, we've got to start with one of the key players, which is the vagus nerve. So, think of the vagus nerve, that main communication highway between your brain and your body. It's part of your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the system that helps bring you back to rest and digest, your calm and grounded state. Now, the cool thing about the vagus nerve is it is bidirectional. It works both ways. About 20% of the vagus nerve signals go from your brain to your body, but 80% go from your body to your brain, which means your body has a huge say in whether your brain gets the message that it's safe or it's stressed. And that's why nervous system regulation needs to happen really in two directions: bottom up, body to brain, and top down, brain to body. When we're only trying to think our way to calm or tell ourselves to calm or speak to ourselves using calming thoughts, it's not like it's not helpful, but we're missing the other 80% of the conversation. So, some bottom up practices, body to brain practices that you might try using are all about using your body to tell your brain it's okay, you're safe now. So, we can do things like breath work. Low and slow breathing signals to the vagus nerve to activate your parasympathetic system. It tells your body and your brain we're not in danger anymore, even if your brain is spinning out of control. You can also try gentle movement, like things like stretching, walking, or dancing. They move the energy through your body and will help you shift out of fight or flight states. Even just doing things slower. Slowing down overall can really send messages of safety to your nervous system to help it shift into a more regulated parasympathetic state. Now, if you are stuck in that hypo state where there is more collapsed or shutdown energy, movement can help with that too. We're adding a little bit of movement into the system, which can help bring in some activation to get you to that home state. And then there's grounding and orienting exercises. When you do feel disconnected or overwhelmed, these grounding practices, things like just like planting your feet on the floor, holding something textured, using hand cream, rubbing your arms, or even just orienting by looking around in space, reminds your body where you are and that you are safe. So, those are some bottom up things. Start with the body to send messages up to the brain that it is safe. And then we don't want to forget about the top down practices. They're amazing too. These work by shifting the stories that your brain is telling. So, your body can stop reacting to perceived threats that may not even be happening anymore. So, one of those things is journaling. Journaling helps you process your emotions and it creates space between you and your thoughts. It's kind of like clearing clutter off the mental desk. You're getting the information out of your brain onto some type of paper or your computer. You're just offloading it. Then we can use some reframing where we can use language to change your internal dialogue. Things like instead of saying to yourself, like, oh, I'm such a mess, reminding yourself that you're doing the best that you can, sending a message to your nervous system of compassion over criticism. Then we can work with our emotions. You can name what you feel. When you name an emotion, so like I feel anxious, you actually start calming your brain's alarm system because it gives your prefrontal cortex a chance to come back online. And then another final example is just visualization. Just imagining a calming place or a moment can shift your physiology in real time. Your body responds to imagery as if it's real. So when you picture a safe, relaxing scene, your nervous system actually starts to believe it too. So when people say, what can I actually do to regulate my nervous system? That's it. These practices, when we do them gently and consistently with invitation and with intention, they help lower your allostatic load, what you are carrying. And they help you build up the capacity you need to face life without constantly getting knocked over every time the tide rolls in. So I want you to think of your nervous system. It's like a bridge. It is designed to carry weight, all life's ups, downs, stressors, surprises, whatever it throws at you. But if that weight keeps piling on without any breaks, any repairs, or any relief, the bridge can start to crack. That's your allostatic load. And then bottom up and top down practices, like the ones we just talked about, they're kind of like reinforcement beams. They don't erase the stress, but they help your bridge stay strong. They reduce the strain, they repair the damage, and over time, they build you a sturdier foundation. And this is why nervous system work isn't just nice to have work. It's your infrastructure. It helps you carry what life hands you without collapsing under the weight. Now, if you're looking for a great way to start supporting your nervous system, the Nervous System Journaling Club is a great place to start. You'll learn a bit about how your nervous system works, and then we do use simple tools like journaling and doodling to help you actually apply it. So it's not about doing things perfectly. It's about creating a rhythm that helps you feel a little bit more steady. That's what I have for you today. I hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Building Resilience podcast. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about managing stress, building resilience, and leading a more purposeful life, then make sure we're connected on Instagram and Facebook at Leah Davidson Life Coaching. You can also subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.leahdavidsonlifecoaching.com/newsletter. Looking forward to connecting.